Our guest today on Beyond the Lair is the great Chief Gibby Jacob from the Squamish Nation. Chief Gibby discusses past, present, and the incredible future of storytelling with his new 6-part series, Back to the Fire, in search of lost values that could change the world. Welcome to our second episode of Beyond the Lair, where we have an in-person podcast. This is our first in-person podcast with my greatest hero, for sure, and one of my greatest mentors, Chief Gibby Jacob from the Squamish Nation, Kákeltn. I am your co-host, Gina Jackson Montgomery, traditional name Cetacea from the Kákeltn Nation.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that Chief Gibby is here, the wisest and funniest chief I've ever met, all combined in one.
You forgot good looking.
Oh, yeah.
Very handsome as well.
I knew you'd remind me.
So because this is a national podcast, Chief Gibby Jacob is a hereditary chief of the Squamish Nation, which is the second largest nation in British Columbia, located right on the coast of Vancouver, Coast Salish people. Maybe Chief Gibby can give us a little bit of history about Squamish and about growing up being a Squamish Nation member.
Well, thank you. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with you two. I love you both, and you're doing such great work for all of the people of this country, and especially the youth in your youth camps. I'm so happy to hear that you're both involved, and it's being such a great success for the young people. For everything we do, it's for the young people, for the next gen, and it's been my mantra for a long time. And, that was one of the things that was kind of drilled into me. You're not doing this for yourself. You're doing it for the young people and the future generations. So I am, as you mentioned, one of the, we call it siyám in our nation, not chief, siyám. We never really had chiefs. We got a designation from our families to be the speaker and, of the family. There was no one grand poobah who made the decisions for the whole family. Everybody got together and talked about things and decided on the path they were going to move forward on. So, it was a good thing. There wasn't an autocratic society. It was getting together to determine as a family what was going to be happening. Prior to 1923, each of our villages was a tribe of their own. I come from Kákeltn, which is called today the Kákeltn Indian Reserve. Kákeltn is an anglicized name of one of my ancestors, Kákeltn. Kákeltn was his name. And because the non-natives couldn't say a lot of the things that are the names, especially of our villages and our people. That's why we ended up with English and anglicized names of, like Kitsilano, for instance. Another, for instance, is the name of one of my other ancestors, and his name was Kitsilano. And they changed it to Kitsilano. And so anyways, that history went on, and prior to 1923, there was a lot of our land being taken, whole villages, just, taken by the government and railways and you name it. And Pacific Great Eastern was the first railway who moved into our territory. They come down from Pemberton area, down that corridor, and they wanted our villages in Squamish because it was the first place their tracks touched water. So they looked at it, and the actual name that it was given, Squamish, was Newport. That's why they wanted our villages gone. Over 1,200 acres of land was taken from our people. They said, either you sell it to us or we'll expropriate and we'll give you what we give you. So under duress, our people had to relent. And so we lost lots of acreage. That's just one, for instance. We've had lots of other lands that were taken. So all the villages, all had siyáms. And, back in the day, they said, we got to get together. We got to stop this. They're giving people money, and those people are moving to other people's villages. So we got to stop it, and they determined that all the land, all of the siyáms and the people said, all the land will be owned in common by all of us. And any money that comes in will go into a joint account that will be owned by all of our people, so that there was nobody going to get rich by selling their reserve land and, moving to somebody else's reserves. So that's kind of a real brief intro to our people. And back then, I think we went down to 725 people from over 15,000. Smallpox, influenza. It was a contact.
Yeah, it's about 23. You said 1923 at that.
Yeah, that's when we amalgamated into being the Squamish Indian Band.
Yeah.
But we lost so many people. Let's say right down to 750. Now we're over 4,000. Back up, going the right direction. But there's so many of our people because of residential school and that era, that don't know anything. And they wonder, why don't you know anything? And it's because their parents don't, because they were scooped, sent to residential school. Then there was the 60 scoops people who all lost the very important things that, who we are, where we come from, all of the traditional teachings and all of those things that, some of us were, in my generation, I think we're probably the last ones who had people who's had. My father, for instance, was raised by his grandfather, and his grandfather was born in 1860 something, a long time ago. So my dad had the real teachings, nothing from books, none of that kind of stuff. He was told by his grandfather who he was, where he came from, and all the other important things that he had to learn. And he learned that sitting around a fire, Back in the day, my grandfather would make my father go for a shokum, a bath, every morning. Didn't matter what season it was. If the river was frozen, he'd have to bring something to break a hole in the ice to get in there. So every morning. And when he finished, went back to his father's longhouse. It was Siyám Reserve in Squamish. Go back to the longhouse, dry up, warm up, and have breakfast. And then his grandfather would sit him around the fire and give him the teachings that he wanted my father to know to be a good Squamish man. Because my father, I guess, was determined back in the time that he'd probably be the one following in the succession of siyáms in our family. So around the time they were taking all of our people to residential school, my father and all the guys around his age, my father would have been over 110 years old today, that they scooped them all at the same time and sent them to Lytton. And there was a residential school there. And my father was 13, grade 1. And they were only allowed to go to 16 years old, then they got turfed out of school. So he had a grade 3 education, and which was, kind of normal for the people who escaped for a number of years from the government and the cops. So anyways, my father's telling me all these stories when I was a young kid, maybe 9 to 12. I used to go fishing with him in the coho season up in Squamish, gill netting, and some of the happier days of my life because, it was just me, my dad, and one other guy. So, I had my dad pretty much all to myself. So that was pretty good. And we'd fish all day, clean the fish, put them on a rope, put a rope through their gills and their mouth, and just hang them in the Squamish River because it's glacier-fed, ice cold water. So we'd finish that. We'd cook a salmon, throw a couple of spuds in the fire, and whatever else we had to have for supper, and we'd finish that, clean up, and get ready for the night and get up daybreak and go fishing again. But my father, sitting around a fire. Back then we didn't have any lawn chairs. That's a long time ago. So we had the old skinny pipe leg chairs that you used to have in your kitchen. Anyways, sit around the fire, and my father'd be telling me all of these things. I wish I could remember half of what he told me. I'd be a historian, but I remember bits and pieces of things because I was so young. You don't understand the importance of things when you're that young. And
How old were you when you?
well, 9 to 12. Pretty much the years I was fishing with my father. Then I got my first girlfriend. That was it for fishing.
No more fishing.
I can see why you tried that.
Yeah. Plus I played sports. I loved soccer, so I played that all year round.
Yeah.
From when I was a kid, and I think I retired at 47 or 48. My knees were just shot.
Yeah.
I could just hear them clicking, sound like Rice Krispies every time I was running.
I was just going back to what you're saying and how it's the storytelling and it's an oral history, and it is. And so last weekend we were at Auntie Mabel's celebration of life, and I know very emotional for Gina, of course, and yourself. Oh, yeah, so it's just an incredible woman. But Uncle Gary Feschuk, made it very clear to everyone there that the reason why you spend time together is to learn the stories, right? And that's how you do it. They're not meant to be written, right? And I thought that was really profound, didn't you?
Yeah, I find it, and I think Chief Gibby and our relationship working with you, for everyone that's listening, Chief Gibby was the head of the BRS Business Revenue Office for Squamish, sat on council for many years. So maybe you could go through a little bit about your journey working for the nation on a council level, and then seeing the economic opportunities for participating in capital projects coming in with on our territories and negotiations, and also showcasing the world and bringing the attention to Indigenous people in such a positive light during the 2010 Olympics, because you played such an imperative role recommending the world and inviting the world to come and see us over here on the West Coast.
How long do I have?
Yeah.
3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I started my political career in 1981. And this was only after that. Prior to 81, if you were a chief, you were a counselor for life. So we had many senior counselors who were probably in the day or late 70s, early 80s, and you went go and watch them in a council meeting. Half of them were asleep, because it's a long day for them. And so a bunch of us young people got together and said, we need the opportunity to elect who we want to run our government. And we asked council to put in place an election system, and that chiefs could stay chiefs. We weren't after anything like that, and but we wanted the opportunity to vote for councillors. So, anyways, they wouldn't do it, so it forced us into young people. There's probably 75 of us who were the keys to getting the election system started. That we went a non-confidence on them, but we didn't do it just from the 75. We said we want a referendum. So we put together a couple of issues why we wanted the right to have an election, and our side won. And so all of those who were on council at the time, had the opportunity to run, and I think 11 or 12 of them all got back in, so that the people had confidence in many of them. But, the older ones, a lot of the older ones are just were not reelected or elected, I guess. So, anyways, so that was the start of my term, and it was so tough that I had a brother and a sister, first cousin, uncle, who were on council for the non-confidence, and a couple of them didn't get back in. So, needless to say, I wasn't the favorite son at the Christmas dinner, right? But it was always for the people, and that's the reason we did it. We wanted good governance, and then we wanted people in there who were, keen to get things done. And didn't matter if it was young people, just people who had to work and to get the good things for the people. So, anyways, that's the start of my career, and I for the first couple of years, one of our teachings is, you got to listen. You have to listen. If you don't listen, you'll never hear the words that you need to hear. A lot of times, you watch a provincial government or a federal government, somebody starts yapping and everybody's heckling the hell out of them, right? I don't know how the hell they can hear each other when they're talking like that. It's so disrespectful. In our world, you don't be chirping off when somebody else is speaking because they got the floor. Well, anyways, my first term, just sitting there listening for probably a couple of years was gold. You got to got to understand where you come from. That was one of my other teachings that I received is you have to understand where you come from to know where you're going, and listening to some of the things that, were done prior to, like I was 14, 15, some of the great stuff that happened back in that time. The council put a letter to the federal government, wanting to develop some of our land, and they hold all the keys to the locks. And, we wanted to get more land back because so much had been stolen from our people, and the majority of it was in the floodplain, but, nevertheless, we wanted to get land back. So learning all these things, it sticks in your mind, is that it wasn't mine, it wasn't my decision to do those things, but, at the time the people said, that's the right thing. That's the right thing to do. So I had no thoughts of changing anything in that area. So our people's wishes got to carry through on them. And so that was, again, another teaching that I'd received. If you know where you come from, being at that time, 1966, that my responsibility was to keep pushing that dial forward. And I tried, I tried to stay true 100% to where they were at in that time. And fortunately, it worked, and there's so many things in between that time and, when I retired. But my time on council, I really enjoyed it.
So, Chief, when you say it was when it worked, you mean like so it worked in the sense that you felt like you had some big wins or successes, or how would you qualify that?
Well, prior to me getting on council, the council of the day said, we should be collecting our own taxes from our tenants, Park Royal, Department of Environment, lessees, and others. That we were the first band in Canada to collect our own revenue, negotiate the rent reviews. So we accomplished a lot of things for a lot of the other First Nations in this country. And most people don't know that. And, so there's got to be people who take the forefront, and we were one of the first taxing bands. And we've done a lot of great things. We're probably over $100 million in receipts coming in to our nation. Yeah, we built our Chief Joe Mathias Center, Totem Hall in Squamish, and a bunch of other allowable expenditures under the tax law. So, you start looking at, I guess, the governance of this stuff was, a lot of people don't understand tax. I never really understood tax because I never paid it, ever. Well, I did when I worked off reserve, but, most of my work was on reserve, so. But when my cousin Harold says we should get into our taxing regime, he just got blasted. He got blasted up one side, down the other. What do you think we are, white men? No, this is money coming in. We don't have to, give it to anybody. So everybody, that sounds good.
It's really interesting because our last podcast was with Angie Brown from Grant Thornton, and they're a huge accounting firm that work with Indigenous communities, AcDev corporations, chief and council, and also Indigenous entrepreneurs that have small to medium businesses. But the importance of having your numbers intact and also pivoting with technology. It's interesting to have. We all have our cultural and values, but also we're all shifting with technology so that we can keep up and we can participate. And I think that's one of the great things that you have done is you've really, really shifted the paradigm when it comes to, number one, welcoming the world to the Olympics and all of the attention that got. Can you maybe tell us about how you participated in that and what an experience it was? Because I know it certainly shifted the West Coast and how people look at us from all over the world.
Well, wasn't a lot of magic to it, it was like people ask me, what does a chief do? I just chief the hell out of everybody. but our late Chief Joe Mathias, my late Chief Joe Mathias, and Lyle from Lilawat, Mount Currie, got together and they were talking. And it was at the very genesis of the bid for the games and getting together a group that would support the bid for the games. And unfortunately, my chief passed away, and I looked around at the council table and I looked at my people and I said, oh my God, who's going to take his place? And I started thinking about it. Well, I'm the only one who's ever asked to join him. So it would probably be me. Then I got scared, I really got scared. It was such a huge file, the treaty and land claims and all the rest of that stuff. And probably had the biggest group that was working on any one thing at the time in that arena. And so I started getting scared and I was like, wow, geez, what the hell have you been scared about? Nothing ever scared me before. Then I started thinking about the way I was thinking, me and I. And I thought, that's foreign to me. Mm-hmm. That's so foreign to me because of my sports background. It's always been we, us. Yeah. And so I figured, well, you know what? We surrounded Joe with all we could do for him, giving him all the sage advice that we had. And I figured, well, everybody who is here, I know them all. They're close to me. I said, they won't abandon me. Be the royal me, right? So they'll support how we go forward. They'll always give me that advice and they'll always let me know when I'm not right.
Yeah. I think from every great leader, and you truly are, I always hear the same thing. It's always we.
Yeah. That's just how it should be, and some of the councils I've seen in the past, recent past, are me and I, my portfolio, my this, my that. I said, my God, what's wrong with you guys?
We had Gina, we worked with someone in the past, and she'd always do a funny thing, and she'd say, oh yeah, me.
Like you're starting a musical, starting little instruments. I know I've had the fortune of working with you. I worked for the Squamish Nation for 13 years and being
This was my next question.
a Kákeltn Nation member. We are family. My Auntie Mabel, who Dean referred to, Mabel Guess, married into Squamish many years ago, probably 60 plus years ago, and became a Squamish Nation member. But still had her ties to Kákeltn. And I know a lot of the stories, because Chief Gibby, you come to many of our events, our memorials, our baby naming ceremonies. You stood behind our son when he received his name, Quash, which he shares with my Uncle Lloyd and my cousin Steve and my cousin Daryl, which means gentleman. But you always joke when you go to all the ceremonies about soccer, and that's how you have that connection. I'm not sure who beat who, Squamish or Kákeltn, or who was the upper people, but you always always joke about that and a whole regime of athletes. But working with you, with the Squamish Nation, you are an incredible leader, and not just for the community, but seeing when people would come in, when industry would come in and they would feel awkward and they would not know the protocols, or they wouldn't know how to behave, or what, you just made everyone feel so comfortable. And I know that so many people in industry, particularly after you left, were so sorry to see you go, because it's a different changing of the guard. It's not that same comfortable relationship building. And maybe you can explain why relationship building is so important, not just nation to nation, but proponent and partner to working with Indigenous communities, and why it's important to be light and have that relationship and be at ease.
I'll go back to the 2010 because this is a good example of it. In the bid committee, there was over 120 representatives on that bid committee, and I knew nobody. Absolutely nobody other than Lyle Leo. And so we came in, two brown-skinned guys, and, looking around, God, how are we going to maneuver around all these people? And, always the same way. You got to create relationships. Well, where do you start? In this particular instance, started at the top. Got to know who's who in the zoo. And so we got to meet all of the chair people and that kind of stuff in the bid committee. And, we just continued on building that relationship and, finding out who was where and, why they were there, who are you? And one of the first things we said to everybody, you guys are trying to put the games on in our land. So that marker went down right away. You're trying to utilize some of our land, and we got to be full participants in this thing. As my late Chief Joe used to say, we're not going to be beads and trinkets in this thing. And I remember that throughout my political career, we're not going to be beads and trinkets. And, we have to have a meaningful role in what's going on here. So,
was he the first one who coined that phrase? I mean, if it's, you hear it everywhere now, do you think?
I don't know. It's a long history.
Yeah.
And there's some other great sayings that I've followed in my life. But anyways, I don't know if he did or not. But it was one of the great things that I always judge myself by. And so, anyways, moving along. Lyle, between him and I, were the only two First Nations involved at the get-go of the bids, right? There was no Musqueam, there was no Tsleil-Waututh. And so between us two and our teams, I had 3 team members who worked with me, key folks, and he had 3 or 4 on his side, and the hereditary chief from up there. So we decided that Lyle would take the the business side of things, and I do the political and relationship building and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And so I made my way through the myriads of people who were involved at the time to create those relationships that were necessary to move our file forward. And so we were pretty successful in doing what we did. And, we said to ourselves, you know what, because we heard about the Calgary Olympics where there was, the natives were there, but they were kept outside of the Olympic Village. And I thought, what the hell is that about? It's their land, and, these white people come in, tell them you can't come in here. So that's never going to happen to us. If they try and do that to us, it's the end of their games. That's what we told ourselves. We don't need you guys. We don't need the games. Doing quite well, thank you. And so, anyways, we didn't get to that point. Thank God, because it was such a great event. And so we kept pushing. And we said we're going to squeeze them until they start crying, for benefits for our people. We were having so I was doing the reporting out to the Kokel Coordination Commission that came into town every 3 months, I think it was, and from the Luzon. And so they come and say, well, how's it going for you folks? And blah, blah, blah. And all the other VPs and that would report out to them. So anyways, I finished my report and I said, oh, excuse me. I said, I forgot one thing. I said, we would now, and this is about 3-4 months before the book was to go into Luzon for the final review, right? See who gets to move on or who gets eliminated. Anyways, so at the end of it, I said, I got one more thing to mention. I said, our two nations, now we want to talk about benefits to our people. And the place just went, you could just feel the tension rise in her. And I say, you could have heard a mouse fart in that room. It was so quiet. But, and I could see them all turning, looking at each other. Because when you're on the lectern, right, you just look down and you see everybody, especially all of the senior folks, are, what do they want? What? So I got approached after the meeting was over, and what do you mean you guys want benefits? You guys supported us. I said, I never ever said that word once. I said, we're participating. Participating and supporting, two different words. So if you go back to what I was saying, participating in the process. So now we want to talk about benefits to our people, because you're on our lands. Don't forget that. And, well, what do you want? We said, we want whatever you guys are getting. There's housing being given to the Olympic Committee. There's housing. There's money being given for this, for that, and the other thing. There's land being given from our land being given to Whistler for housing. And there's all these kind of things happening. I said, we want nothing different than anybody else. So they couldn't say no because it was already being done, right? So that was a part of our strategy that worked to a T. Can't say no when you've done it already.
And you somehow manage to keep things positive when you do that.
Oh, yeah.
From their percent, it's very understandable.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think in any circle, when we talk to industry, because we're still in the industry, working with leaders and partners, that you're one of the most favorite people. And I think Dean has a story, and it's very profound. And we utilize this quote all the time about Brad Mason, who's also going to be a guest on our next episode.
Yeah, and so Brad, an amazing guy, and through Gina, because I first met you through Gina, and when you were working together, and we need to hear some stories about how serious Gina took her work with you all the time afterwards.
Oh no, that's a whole other podcast series. That is a whole other podcast series.
How much time do we have?
Anyways, I came in and And, I said, Brad, this is Chief Gibby. And you're like, hey, Brad, how are you? And I would have some, informalities, and it was nice. And so, Chief, do you want me to tell you what I do? And you said, no, you do construction. I'm a chief. Construction doesn't matter. I said, but you can tell me why you do it. And I saw Brad sit back in his chair and go, that's a good question. Right. And he still tells the story just like we do. And it's a really beautiful thing. So
it is. And I think to myself, it's such wise words, and you have so many great stories and so many affirmations. But I really do think I ask entrepreneurs that when we did our season 2 contestants, each of them. So just to get warmed up, before you tell us what you do, tell us why you do it. And a couple of them got really emotional, because sometimes you don't see the forest through the trees, and you just have to really get back down to what your fundamentals and your core values are, which leads me to the next question.
Can I get to just finish off? Because one more thing is that, because I was on the energy side of things, and I said, it's Chief Gibby, and we were working with Alltech, and he said, what do you think about getting into renewables? And Chief Gibby said, yeah, I'm going to start a wind farm company. And I said, really? Do you remember what you said the rest of that was?
Yeah, I remember. One of my favorite ones.
What did you say?
The name of it's going to be Breaking Wind.
So I didn't get the beautiful, deep, profound. He made a breaking wind joke at me.
You got a breaking wind joke. That's pretty funny. Wow. I love it. And always a great sense of humor. I know that we have probably about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to talk about, besides your profound career and your retirement, because we held a really great retirement party for you where ministers showed up. It was like, it's something that somebody would dream of having at their funeral, but being able to live it, because people said so many wonderful, beautiful things about you. But you're working on something different, because we never truly retire. We keep teaching and we keep moving forward. And as I spoke about shifts in paradigm and technology, you were working with a gentleman by the name of Andy Keene to do a documentary called Back to the Fire. And I know that teachings, and when you were talking about your father with your grandfather and coming to the fire and him telling stories and teachings, I would assume that's where the name and the whole premise came from. But maybe you can tell us about this. This is a 6-part series. It's 44 minutes. You interview amazing leaders, but what speared this? What's the idea? What is it about? And how can people get involved?
Well, thank you for raising this. It's hopefully going to be a legacy that I leave behind that'll touch the future this generation and future generations. It's going back to the fire, as I'd mentioned previously, is that, that's where the teachings came from. That's where all of the good things that were to be passed on generation to generation were spoken of. And these things, I say, I don't own them. I don't own what I know. It was given to me for a reason, and that was not for me to be profiting from it. It's to be shared with whoever listens. I don't care who it is. If you're open, you got open ears. It's something to be learned. It doesn't matter who teaches you. I've had great teachers, many different colors, many different nationalities, and as you'd heard me say before, you hear through your ears. You process it through your mind. And when it becomes your truth, when you buy into what people are telling you, where does it land? In your heart. That becomes what you pass on to others. And so all I'm doing is passing on what was given to me. And, it's important enough that it's stuck in my mind. And had a lot of great teachers. My parents to start out with, they're pretty awesome folks. And unfortunately, my dad, had a stroke at, I think it was 45 or 46. And like I say, just about killed him. Both my parents worked. My mom worked in a fish cannery for 40 years, and I can remember her coming home. You could smell her before you could see her. Smell like salmon, right? The buses, ladies always were guaranteed a seat on the bus. They'd go in the back and everybody moved to the front. So my parents, were obviously the first teachers we all have, and I never knew my grandparents. I was very young when my dad's dad passed away. I was old, like only 4.5, 5. And I was even younger than when my mom's mom passed away. So I have vague recollections of seeing them, but I never knew them. I can't remember knowing them, ever talking to them or anything. So, I kind of borrowed, I had aunts and uncles, who, my late Uncle Henry Luckia, used to let me hang around with him, and I was a small kid, 5, 6 years old. And so you hear things, and a lot of times when you're young, you don't understand them. And, but if you remember anything of what they tell you, that's stuff that landed here. So those are the important things. And, throughout my life, being an athlete, you have to create relationships and gain respect from your players, co-players on, how you share, those kind of things. I've always been a bossy guy, when I played soccer, when I played center fullback, I was the boss. I told everybody what to do. Didn't matter whether they're way up the other end of the field or not. Get back here, get out. I'd be screaming at everybody. Lacrosse, same thing. I was an assistant captain, and I made even people in practice. I told them, if you don't pick it up, I'm going to knock the heck out of you. Pick it up. We're not going to be packing your own when the game time comes. Get busy. So, that really sustained, started and sustained my thoughts on moving things forward and understanding people's needs. If you don't understand people's needs in any form, you're not gonna move forward. I worked as a co-chair of the BC Aboriginal Fisheries Commission, which was all of the coastal First Nations and all the ones that wanted to participate anyways. And so that was a daunting task. It was commercial fishermen against the sports fishermen, against the trollers, against the seiners, against this, against that. And all the while, the fish are the ones that are taking the kicking, right? So I kept trying to bring everybody back to that, if we don't watch what we're doing, we're going to be a part of the problem of, the downfall of the salmon. We got to understand that we can fix this thing, or we can be big part of that problem.
Well, I think that's a big part of why your documentary, while your 6-part series is so important, is because you've often told about listening to your elders and being respectful to your elders. But if you're not around the fire, because time doesn't allow that now. Kids are busy. They're in front of video machines. Parents are working. We get together at different ceremonies where it's, whether it's memorials or baby namings or celebrations of life or what have you. So getting around the fire to hear those elders' teachings sometimes is really limited. And I know that as we were talking about shifting with technology, Back to the Fire is a 6-part series. And how did you come about meeting Andy Keene to do something like that? Who are your supporters? Where are you on the project? I know that Dr. in Chief Robert Joseph is on episode 1 to talk about his thoughts before the leaders that are making such an impact and shift are not with us any longer, and what the importance is it to carry your legacy on, and then also their legacy on through this 6-part series.
Just before I get to that point, I'd like to step back a bit and, We have an amalgamation date, which comes, I think we just passed the 100-year mark of all the Squamish bands becoming the Squamish Indian band. And then now we're the Squamish Nation. That we'd host an event down at our park in Kákeltn, which is the name of the village I live on. It's called Kitsilano, Kákeltn. And, all of the departments would have a booth and would give prizes away. And so everybody who attended had an opportunity to win something. And how you got to be declared a winner was everybody had a little card. So you'd have to go to every booth, get a stamp. So we had, for the kids, we had something simple. And, which village do you come from? I come from Kitsilano. I said, no, you don't. I live here. What do you mean I don't? That's not the name of the village. That's the name of one of our ancestors. Kákeltn. Kákeltn, make them say it. Kákeltn. They'd be good enough to say it. It's not Kákeltn. So we'd do that, to all the kids that come in. Well, which village are you from? Mission. That's not Mission. That's a missionary's name for your village. Oslahan. Say it. We'd make them say it. You give them a stamp. Just remember that. Then I start getting kind of perturbed. And then, what's wrong with these kids? They don't even know which village they live on. They don't know our ancestral name. Then I realized they don't know it because their parents don't know it. Because of the residential school carryover, right? And just so many things that have been lost in transition from pre to post. And so that was one of the big things in my mind, if we continue on and going back to my dad's time when the circle was broken, when they got snatched and sent to Lytton, the circle was broken of how we translated and educated our own people. But the things that are important, we didn't need, science. We didn't need, social studies. Why would we want to learn about Europe? That's where all our trouble came from. So looking back and knowing that happened is my view was, and knowing a lot of my friends like late Chief Joe Mathias, George Watts, to name a couple, and so many other great leaders that passed, and some of us who are lucky enough to hang out with them, got to be taught a lot. But there were so many others who, no clue. So, and they took a lot with them when they went. So I figure, before all of the great leaders that I know are gone, I want to get them on film and sharing what they want to share for the future, not only their people, but whatever people, because there's a lot of messages in there that go beyond being a First Nation message. So I was sitting there thinking, Jesus, somebody's got to do something. And then my dad's message popped in my head. You don't ask somebody to do something you won't do yourself. I remember that. Well, here we go. New journey.
No, and it's almost an obligation. I know that when Dana and I, when we created the Bears Lair, working with the Squamish Nation, you were very proactive towards entrepreneurism, very proactive in independence for our people and creating economies within communities. So starting a TV show or a TV series in your 70s and being able to really spread that message. But it doesn't just include some of the guests on the documentary don't just include our people from Canada. You've also chosen some leaders from the States. So not being it just limited to the people that we know here, like the Robert Josephs or Chief Dr. Robert Joseph or Sophie Pierre, but there's also John Echohawk, and he's from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Henrietta Murrin from Oklahoma. How did you find these type of people that are Indigenous as well, but over the border? Why is it that you felt that it was important not to just include our people, but what are the values that are different or that are similar that you felt that you needed to have something on them as well?
Well, I think we're all in the same canoe. We're just at different stages. They're talking about the transfer of education to First Nations. There's some First Nations that don't even have an office. How are they going to manage education? That's the cornerstone of us moving forward as a people. I think those kind of things got to be shared, and information is power, right? And I know there's First Nations like that, others have to step up. We'll help you. We will help you and, look after your people. Because together we rise, together we fall. Just like entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. People think, we've joined the white society long time ago. This is new. Entrepreneurship is new in our villages. As sophisticated as people think Squamish is, prior to 1980, like we might have had 2 entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So, and they, back at that time, for a village of maybe 2,000 people, that's pretty low percentage rates, right?
Well, I think with a leader like yourself and just providing a program, because when I was working with the Squamish Nation with you, now there's 500 out of a membership of 4,100. So it's really having leadership beliefs and cheerleaders and programs and opportunities for a series like this. I know with the Bears Lair, it takes some support, it takes some funding, it takes some belief and initiative and education and listening to elders and listening to advice on how we can better the world, about the environment, about economic success, and just advice that you're going to get from leaders that you would never get the opportunity to. So who's supported you in this project so far, and how can people contribute to this project? Because I know this is a self-funded project, and how can people learn more, and how can they support you?
Well, we do have a website, backtothefire.net, and you can get all the information off of that. And there's other pieces of information that, you can look at and, determine whether your values lead you to supporting the project or not. Excuse me. But, that is one way of doing it. And, we just actually started a company a couple of weeks ago, Andy and I, because some of the funders were asking, do you guys have a company? Well, we got individual companies, but we never had one together. So we...
This better be a smart-ass name.
Pardon me?
This better be a smart-ass name for the company.
Yeah.
Treasure box.
Yeah. Treasure box. Breaking Wind Industries. Amazing. Well, if any of our listeners today would like to find out more, I'll give you some information before we tap out. Chief Gibby, is there anything that you'd like to say on this national level about your journey and just your advice to the listeners, for entrepreneurs, for leaders and community, and for the youth of today? What is your message?
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you to both of you. You two together are a force to be reckoned with, and looking after our young people, is such a crucial thing to have happen, and to have people that have it in their hearts and their minds to do that for our young people is just so fantastic. When you talked about 500 entrepreneurs before you came and joined our team, I think we only had around 75. My numbers might be skewed, but so during your time, coming in. You quantum leap for our people doing business plans, all of the great stuff that they didn't know they needed, but you taught them. And, I know they'll forever be grateful to you. And so thank you. Never got to thank you in public anywhere, but you're a special, special person. And this is your husband is. It must be good if he caught you. But just keep your ears open. The gift of listening is kind of left everybody, and it's sad because if you're not listening, you're going to miss something, whatever it is. And I can remember being at a meeting in Squamish. Whistler municipality wanted to dump some sewage into a system that brought it over into the Squamish River through it via a dam. We said, no way. So we had a meeting at this fellow's place. His name was Marty, up in the valley, and it had a big home, big log cabin. So there must be about 50 of us there. And so we all sat in our living room, and one person's tried to talk, and everybody, like the government, trying to talk over each other, right? I was sitting there. I couldn't hear what the person was saying. Real loud. I could yell real loud. Scared the crap out of everybody. So they all stopped. And I said, you know what? What you're doing is the epitome of non-respect for the speaker. I said, in my culture, whoever has the floor and is speaking has everybody's attention, bar none. I won't say anything. You shouldn't be saying anything. I said, well, we have talking sticks, which I was bullshitting on, but because we don't use talking sticks, right? So I said, whoever's got that talking stick commands everybody's attention. They have the floor to speak. So they're all looking at each other. Oh, that's a great idea. Marty says, well, I don't have a talking stick. And I said, well, he says, let me find something. So he comes back and he's got a carved coconut monkey. There's all these people fast around this carved coconut. I'm like, I couldn't stop laughing. That'll do.
Oh, I love that. It's great symbolism. It's like Lord of the Flies when you have the conch and you're allowed to speak and pass around the conch.
So listen above all else, and speak only when you got something that's useful to say to other people. Don't just be talking because you're a talking head. Respect other people, and that's what I've always tried to do in my life, is respect other people. And my mom always used to say, son, you have something you'll never run out of and you can give to everybody. I looked at her, what's that, Mom? She said, love. You'll never run out of it, and you can give it to whoever you want to give. A lot of times you get it back. I said, oh, that's sage advice. And I got up to speak at one of our community meetings. I said, first thing I want to say is I love everybody here. I said, some this much, some that much, but I love you all.
That's great.
That's lovely.
I also love that expression, which is, and this is exactly, it reflects you, is if you have a sense of humor about yourself, you'll never run out of material.
Yeah, that's true.
For sure. And speaking of a sense of humor and love, we love you, Chief Gibby Jacob from the Squamish Nation. We are so thrilled that you're our first video podcast, and we will continue more conversations in the progression of your 6-part series, Back to the Fire. Again, what is the contact if people are interested in learning more, and also providing any kind of donations or sponsorship for this very, very incredible program that's going to make such a difference and keep on a legacy of advice and circling around education back to the fire.
So Andy sent you some material this morning, so that'll be going on screen, or?
Yeah, that will be.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And what's the website again?
Backtothefire.net.
Backtothefire.net.
Yeah. And
soon to be released, 6 44-minute episodes, captivating information about advice that you will never, ever get unless you listen to this. So,
and a little plug too, I think, for Andy Keene, who's an award-winning director and writer. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, he got an award for Bocasian, and I can't remember the other Tragically Hip video. Yeah, he's a great guy.
and it's a testament that you are never too old. You are never too busy. You never run out of information. We started a TV series in our 50s. Chief Gibby's doing a documentary or a 6-part series in his 70s. So dream on, dream big, take what he said. And we're so excited that we had you, and we love you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and share a bit. Yeah, I could talk forever, you know that.
We could listen forever.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the crew.
That was like a drop the mic. Thanks so much for tuning in to Beyond the Lair. Follow us, download our episodes, follow us on our socials, Bears Lair TV on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Until next time, live your dream, find your purpose.